Tiffany Turned On. I'm your host, Tiffany Anton. I'm a psychotherapist specializing in sex and relationships. I hope to help you get turned on in life as well as inside of your bedroom. This is part 2 of the Relationship Myths podcast. In the first one, we cover the dating scene, love always being pure and ecstatic, and it isn't messy, that we'll never find our true soulmate or twin flame, opposite poles attract, that we have a team fantasy of romantic love, and till death do us part. Check out this episode for a multitude more of relationship myths.
So another article that was just published in Psychology Today talks about 5 most popular myths about love.
Okay, so we did 3. Now these are 5.
These are 5, and they are somewhat similar to the others. You know, the main thing is there's someone predestined for each person, a soulmate.
I want a soulmate. I want the person that's near perfect for me. I mean, I have the desire to have almost a soul-to-soul connection with someone.
Wouldn't we all? We would all love that. But then reality hits you in the face. It's a choice to accept someone for who they are and what they bring to the table. And there's no one that's going to be a perfect fit for us.
Well, and we can't change anyone to make them what we want to be a perfect fit, or you'll be our soulmate if...
It doesn't work like that. It's a myth.
I think that there are a handful of people in existence that would have a wonderful relationship with another.
Okay, fair enough.
So instead of a soulmate, I think there's probably a handful of good matches for you. Now, there's a shit ton of bad matches for you.
And those make you appreciate the good matches, even if they're not perfect matches. They definitely make you recognize the good matches after having all the shitty ones.
Do you think, though, viewing someone as a soulmate might be due to the level of intensity, vulnerability, and even some level of spiritual expression of their love? Do you think that that breaks it down into a potential soulmate?
I know. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, it's the level of connection. And it is tied to how vulnerable you allow yourself to be with that person. You feel as though you can show all sides of yourself without judgment. And that's rare.
Well, I would say I thought that I didn't believe that there was the one person out there. And then I found someone and was shocked. Like, oh my God, you're my human. And then I heard that I was their human. And I didn't end up being their human.
You were their human for a time.
I was, and they were my human for a time. But I had this belief that with continued work, this was going to be a soulmate type relationship.
Of course.
The bond and the attraction and the
chemistry.
Yes, the chemistry. And we had tons of shared vision. Sometimes you think you have a soulmate, which of course I'm making fun of, and it turns out to be more of a teaching mate. How many things can you learn? How many things were you taught? And then what do you do with that to evolve? So taking the pain from when we don't have the match that we expected, assumed, hoped for, and learn and grow from there. What else do they say about soulmates in that one? So we already debunked twin flames, and we talked about that the shitty cult, and the documentary is interesting.
Yeah, well, it also just talks about the intense passion from the early times of a relationship should last forever.
I wish. You know what? I love dopamine. I think that's a dope that we all need to be on.
I was actually having a conversation with my daughter, who's 17, about this.
About dopamine?
About dopamine and how our bodies just crave it. And it's so much fun when we meet somebody new.
It's intoxicating.
And we feel like we can connect with them and they get you. And it's just so exciting. You have a drop.
Because our brain chemistry eventually goes back to normal, and you'll see that within 1 to 2 years. So I tell people, do not get married until after 2 years because you are doped up.
New relationship energy is real.
Freaking fabulous.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to experiencing it again.
Hell yeah.
But we then have real lives with a real human that's sitting across from us. And it's evolutionary based that we have this burst of dopamine. Because when we're crazy about you, we want to have sex with you, which means we're going to have babies so our whole race can exist, the human race. So it has a biological function for our own brain to drug us up.
It definitely has. It does. It drugs
It
us
does.
up.
Drugs us up.
And passion, it dies out.
I think passion can help when your parents watch your kids and you get an overnight. When you go on vacation, I think we can kick up passion there.
Yeah, absolutely. Something new, something fun, something different. But the rest of the time, you're in real life.
You know, people go from relationship to relationship because when that dopamine starts to drop, then they, instead of accepting, real maturity that comes in relationships, they want to hop in to another one to get that feel good.
Of course. And
Yeah.
so they bounce. And that's when you have infidelity a lot of times, is because they're continuing to chase the high.
Then potential good relationships go to the wayside because the high is more needed than the maturity of the person.
Yes.
Their ability to grow as a team with another person.
Absolutely. This one's good. You can love someone you mistreat.
That's the myth?
That's the myth.
You can love someone you mistreat.
Well, you can love someone you mistreat. We all mistreat each other at different times.
Well, to different degrees.
Correct.
Like if you make a snarky comment. That's drastically different than emotional abuse. You're laughing and you're covering your mouth.
Because I was having a conversation with someone about their husband consistently would piss all over the toilet seat. And during the night, she would get up and go into the bathroom. And she'd sit on the toilet seat and it would be wet.
Well, didn't she learn? It's going to be wet? I would think she would have a towel next to it so she could wipe it down before she sat.
She mentioned to her husband multiple times, lift the seat, please. I'm getting a wet bottom every time I go to the bathroom during the night. Be respectful of me, please. You're talking about snarky. She had the conversation. Nothing changed. He would reuse his bath towels for 2 nights.
Oh, and I just mentioned towels. Okay.
Yes. So she started using his bath towel
To wipe off his piss.
to wipe off his piss.
It's perfect
And-
passive aggressiveness.
yes.
Great example.
And would continue hanging it back up.
Did you notice?
He's like, man, is the washing machine not getting things as clean anymore? Because something just isn't right with this. These towels just aren't getting clean. And after a few weeks of this, she finally said, I told you to put the seat up and stop pissing all over the toilet seat. So I've been using your bath towel to clean it up every night.
And what was the outcome?
He stopped doing that.
He did.
He did.
So there was a consequence that he decided it was worth changing his behavior. But you know what? People can interpret that as, if I make a request that's reasonable, and that's beyond reasonable,
Yes.
and you don't respect or honor that, then we can feel unloved.
Absolutely. Treated.
Yeah.
If I'm telling you that this isn't okay and you continue doing it, you're telling me that
Mhm.
you don't care about me.
Now, another side note can be with infidelity is if you love me, you wouldn't have cheated. So how could you love me and cheat? And that is, I'm going to tell you to check out Esther Perel. I'm going to tell you to check out Tammy Nelson in regards of we know that you can love someone and have an affair, even though it's hard to see that. Natasha Lunn wrote an article on Esther Perel titled Esther Perel on Why Happy People Cheat and Infidelity Isn't Always a Deal Breaker. In Esther's second most popular book, The State of Affairs, Rethinking Infidelity, she uses her findings to confront some of the most controversial and uncomfortable questions. In inquiring as to why infidelity occurs, Esther says there's no common reason. Definitely mortality, fear of aging, deadness, a fear of, is it going to be like this for another 25 years, nothing new? But that's one narrative. Neglect is probably the other biggest one. Perel does set out a case for removing the judgment and shame from the conversation and looking at what affairs can teach us instead. She challenges the idea that there has to be a, quote, problem for an affair to bloom. Even happy people cheat, she insists. I could be in a very good relationship with you and our love life, but then something else might appear that connects with something inside of me that has nothing to do with us. It has something to do with my past, my longing, the lost parts of who I was. When it comes to knowing how to prevent an affair, Perel's theory is we learn from affairs that the forbidden will always hold an allure for most. The ongoing challenge for steady couples is to find ways to collaborate in transgressions rather than transgressing against each other or their bond. You cannot affair-proof a relationship by cutting out exes or preventing a partner socializing with attractive work colleagues. Instead, she states there might be a way to work out how to develop illicit acts within your own relationship. She states that infidelity is a window like none other into the crevices of the human heart, and that catastrophe has a way of propelling us into the essence of things. The overt awareness is, can you love someone where you have domestic violence?
Right. That kind of just pulls back into the whole dopamine cycle. Trauma bonds, I would say.
Ooh, trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Okay.
You hurt each other, or one person hurts the other, and then all of a sudden puts the sweetness on, and I'm sorry, it'll never happen again.
Oh, the whole cycle of abuse.
Yeah, it just continues and continues, unfortunately.
And I just want to recommend to people that are listening, domestic violence, any form of emotional or sexual abuse is really important to be aware of, and to seek out support systems and community resources if that happens to be a situation that they're in, because it is distorted, quote-unquote, love. We briefly mentioned domestic violence and could not give it even a pinch of the amount of time. Resources are the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233, the National Dating Abuse Hotline, 866-331-9474, National Sex Abuse Hotline, 800-656-4673, National Center for Victims of Crime, 202-467-8700. Again, these are just a pinch of the resources for you to contact if you are in need of help. This podcast is more for casual discussions, yet it was of vital importance to provide brief resources.
Yes, because they're searching for those highs.
Okay.
And the only way they can experience those highs is if they have really intense lows as well. Because it's a cycle that they're comfortable with and that feels normal to them. And it could be childhood trauma, or it could be previous relationships that also had a dynamic where it was volatile.
I think you have a distorted sense of what love is if you harm your partner. And that is outside of being snarky or passive aggressive.
Yeah, this one just doesn't make sense to me how this is written. So we just talked about you can love someone you mistreat. And then the next one is you can mistreat someone you love.
That feels flip-flop. Well, let's think about it. I talked to some clients sometime about, would you interact that way with the grocery store clerk? And how is it that we're so much more polite to other people, where we can have our mean side to those that we love the most?
It's true. But we can have our mean side to those that we love the most, because we also know that they won't leave us, and we can be the most raw with them.
We want our partners to be raw and vulnerable, but we're looking at the dark side of it. And then my brain goes to people who aren't aware that they're behaving super shitty. I have a fantasy of writing a book called Stop Being a Jerk So You Can Get Laid. And haven't we talked about that?
I don't think so, but I love it.
In this stereotypical example, but this is what I hear. You have a female that goes to the gynecologist that says, I just don't have much sexual interest. And then they're referred to me. And one of the questions I ask is, well, how much of a jerk are you being? I'm not going to be interested in screwing you if you're being rude, if you're being demanding, if you're being passive aggressive. Doesn't matter if I have a strong libido or not. I'm not going to want to share myself with you because I'm not going to feel emotionally safe.
I mean, it all falls back into feeling emotionally safe and being able to be vulnerable. And if you're dealing with someone who is nasty and mean and hateful and just not a good person, why would you want to share yourself with them?
Okay, let me flip it. What if you were the nasty one?
So what?
Then you trying to make for you to become a healthy person, it's important to have that insight, self-awareness, and to make the changes.
Yeah, but usually the nasty person is not that self-aware.
Point.
Usually it's the nasty person who is not the one who is interested in making changes, and everyone has to bend to them.
It's like don't poke the bear philosophy. I was raised with that.
I think a lot of people were. We all, I think, have some caregiver or parent in our lives that was more
intimidating,
more easily
hothead.
Yeah, we had so many holes in our walls from my dad hitting the walls with his
fist. You didn't share that?
Oh yeah, he'd get so mad he'd punch holes in the walls. We just had calendars all over the house.
You did?
Yeah.
I had a friend growing up that they had paper plates and they had it hung to the wall, so it's probably the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that you talk about your dad's aggression like that because you hold him in such high regard.
I do.
So how do you hold those polarities between my dad punched the wall and he was an awesome dad?
He was an awesome dad. I don't know if he was an awesome husband, but you can be an awesome parent and not be an awesome partner.
Did you ever see violence?
No. No violence.
So he was a hothead, punched the wall, you would have the hole, you would use the calendar. That was the intervention strategy.
I was little, but my mother was very immature.
Well, your dad was immature too if he's punching a wall.
He was. He was 27 when they got married. She was 18. Let's face it, he was basically raising a child with daddy issues, for sure. But yeah,
she was cute when she was young.
They were both very attractive, for sure.
I was just thinking, I bet she just, looking at her, this innocent 18-year-old, as adorable.
Absolutely. I'm sure everybody looked at him and said, oh, they made a great couple. Well, they did, but obviously they had problems communicating with each other effectively. They didn't learn those skills and tools.
I have too many people close to me in my life that have the same arguments over and over again and aren't learning from them and aren't changing their pattern. Like, how do we stop this pattern? Okay, let's stop making it a we for that moment. And how do I stop my role in this pattern?
Yeah, I mean, I know one of the things that my dad got really angry about, I was probably too young to remember this, but I've been told the story so many times. My mother being a young mom, and I was the firstborn, he bought her a brand new car.
You heard me say that, and I thought, what, like a bitchin' Camaro? And you said car.
Yeah, it wasn't a Camaro. I had to look back and see exactly what it was, but it was a muscle car at the time.
It was, okay.
Yeah, she would drag race with me in the car.
All right, let's go back, Renelle, to you talking to me about you had a pretty happy childhood, and then we're peeling the onion right now. Talking about some safety concerns. Highly recommend do not drag race with child in the car.
And I wonder why my dad punched holes in the walls. Huh?
Lord.
Someone who's acting like a bratty teenager and putting their child at risk by drag racing with a baby in the car in the 70s when there were no such things.
Seatbelts. Yes. That's right. No seatbelts. This book called Talk to Me Like I'm Someone You Love. It's a very simplistic read because it gives you examples of sentences. And what I did is I bought it for myself as a clinician. And then I gave it to my mother and I put it on her nightstand. Is that for my passive aggressiveness?
Did she read it?
I don't know, but I'm just trying to give some slight interventions without putting my nose quite in the middle. Because I'm wanting them to change the way that they communicate. Hell, if I could, I would put it on a big screen. I would put it in their headphones on repeat to learn new and effective ways of communicating.
But some people just cannot get out of the comfort of the dysfunction that they learned growing up.
Well, their brain's wired that way.
Yeah, and they don't see an issue with it. They're not happy with the results of not being able to effectively communicate with each other, but they're not willing to do anything to change it either.
Well, one could be they don't have the skills. And in therapy, there's so much that's teaching of the skills of how to regulate your own mood and then do the best we can at stop, think, and then speak. It's really hard, those of us who have ADHD.
Yes.
It's thought out the mouth.
Yes.
Yeah. Stop, think. What's the best words to say right now?
And it's probably not fuck you. But
it's probably not fuck you, but sometimes it feels good to say that.
The last thing is considered a myth is that true love can do anything.
True love can do anything. Because I want to say, oh, so we're going to be astronauts? No, true love isn't going to make you astronauts. You have to have so much training and experience and more training. And
Yeah, love is blind. Love.
that's another myth.
Yeah, part of it.
Well, we can be stupid with love. You know, I said at one point in my life, I am crazy in love. And now when I reflect upon it, that was correct, that I was blinded. There's a love is blind part on there.
Two of them were the same. You can love someone you mistreat, and you can mistreat someone you love. And then the fifth thing was true love can do anything. True love does not conquer all.
True love does not conquer all. I've had a relationship we could both easily say, I still love you.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, not in a, I love you like a family member way, but I look at you and I love you. True love is not enough.
Not at all.
We're putting some exclamation points on that one. If you enjoyed part 2 of Relationship Myths, guess what? We've got another. This is a 3-part series. Join me for more myths. The music for Tiffany Turned On is provided by Kumasi Afrobeat. If you're interested in more of their music, you can find them online at kumasiafrobeat.com. KUMASIAFROBEAT.com. They are New Orleans' full Afrobeat band. They play to make you move. If you liked what you heard in today's episode and you want to learn more about me, check out my website at neworleanssextherapy.com. I also have a TED Talk entitled I Love Pleasure from TEDx Vermilion Street.